like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education, CUSD 201, tonight, Tuesday, September 8th, 2015. And roll call, Ms. Black?
Is Lori Ambrose. Mr. Gary Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Marie Charlton.
Here?
Mr. Matt Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Mara Bush.
Here.
Not Bush, sorry. Mr. Joel Price.
Here.
Sorry.
Ms. Judy Wilson. Thank you.
We can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any public comments? All right, then we'll move to the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on that? All right, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Robin Longenbach, a substitute district-wide food service. Number 2, appointment of hearing officer. 3, appointment of non-discrimination officers and complaint managers. And 4, disposal of equipment.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, do you think you're ready? Okay. Then we are fortunate enough to have Steve Cashman here, our district architect, who will give us an update on our facility planning and where we have been and where we're going. So.
Thank you, and hopefully this will work. This is just really a quick overview of where we are currently, where we're going, scope, overall budget. We have an awful lot of work to do, but I thought it makes sense at the very beginning to kind of explain where we're going to go and what the timing would be. First, an update on what just happened this summer. We basically completed 3 projects: a door hardware replacement project for the schools, masonry restoration at J.T. Manning, and then an architectural finishes replacement project that followed on a separate asbestos abatement project. The door hardware project was it was a great project in perfect timing. We basically have now incrementally improved the security of all the buildings, where now all student and staff space at the 2 elementary schools, the junior high and the high school, now have the ability to lock the rooms. And we have some minor pieces we're completing where we had to actually replace some doors to accommodate the hardware, but we replaced just under 400 lock sets at the 4 different schools, and it was fairly transparent. We had a good contractor, and it was interesting even talking to some teachers when they first came back that they realized there was a subtle difference in the classroom door. And that was basically creating a very simple push-button lock so that at any kind of crisis situation, somebody, whether that was a teacher, a student, a visitor, could lock the door and protect themselves. The masonry restoration really turned out even much better than I thought it would be at J.T. Manning. We basically worked on the oldest portions of the school from the 1920s to the 1950s and did a 100% tuck pointing from foundation to roof edge. And if you were familiar with the building in detail, it was quite the grandma's quilt of repairs over decades. And it is now, it had never been an attack like this in a very systematic approach. And it even aesthetically, I think, looks so much better. There's now has a uniform look. We used a slight tint to the mortar to try to tie the different color bricks together. And then there were some other repairs we did: lintel replacement, window head reconstruction, replacing some stone. The mason was also helpful. We had some kind of damage inside the building that wasn't exposed until we completed the abatement project, and they were able to help us complete those little repair work inside the building. And then that architectural finishes project, I know some people might really love that orange carpet that used to be in there for 40 plus years, but it's now finally gone. We removed an awful lot of, the abatement contractor removed a lot of some mastic and tile, and now the corridors The 1960 classroom spaces have new floor finishes. The stairs were always a problem. The big maintenance item for Mike with tripping hazards that were constantly being created because they were carpeted, and those now have ADA compliant visual treads, much easier to maintain, should also be much more durable because since the building does not have an elevator, a lot of materials have to be kind of dragged up the flights of stairs, so they should be much more durable. And if you've been over there, I think the school has a whole new feel to it. It looks much more modern. It was really kind of frozen in the 1950s and early 60s in most of the building. And now on to the larger project, which is basically a security renovation project. It's at these 4 schools, Miller, Manning, the junior high and the high school. And the main goal is to improve safety and security at each of the buildings, and in a way to bring them up to equal levels so that there is some entry security. That's one of the main goals. Manning and Miller being the most challenged because of the locations of the principal's offices away from a main entrance and with no visible supervision. I thought first to talk schedule so you can kind of get a sense where we are and where we'll end up. In simple terms, this project should be completed in the fall of 2017. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure that we can get done in the fall of 2017. The high school is really a challenge. I mean, the reason that has not been attacked since it was really opened is it's such a difficult project to figure out the solution and then to figure out how to actually do it. Even over a 2-year period, 100 days is really not enough time to do it. So one thing we talked about before, and we've started the ball rolling, is to get a construction manager on board, because getting that construction knowledge, not only on pricing, but on sequencing and different ideas of how to take the same design, but execute it in different ways and over different schedules, is just going to be crucial. We had Robert Yu, who was doing the work at Manning, come over and look in. We did a little small demolition project, kind of open up the high school a little bit. And as soon as we explained the project to them, they were like, well, that is extremely challenging, almost impossible. But they then immediately started thinking like a general contractor and a construction manager, what if you did it this way? What if you did this way? So we've started that process going forward, but that's going to be a crucial element, is to have someone on board. The top of the screen really shows a typical project and the phases, and we've talked about this before when I brought projects to you. A lot of times, the smaller projects, you kind of saw it more after the bidding phase. But I think on this project, you will be seeing all the different phases, because it's going to be so kind of crucial to figure out what the design solutions are, to get your input and approval on those, what's the updated cost estimate as we move forward from today until the fall of 2017. So schematic design is really a broad brush where we have a concept, but it's really, there's not a lot of flesh on the bones. It's more of, okay, exactly where, how big, what are we thinking about as far as a solution. Once a design concept, and usually there are numbers of those, we go through the alphabet on that, but once we select a schematic design concept, then it's developed in much more detail to where we really know, okay, there's going to be a piece of casework there, and we know what it's going to be. There's going to be doors, and we know what their sizes are, how they're going to function, and then that allows us to create a more accurate cost estimate, because then you can actually do really detailed takeoffs on those drawings. And then construction documents is the biggest lion's share of work for us. It's usually done more out of your view, but it's really putting together the drawings and the specifications in order to bid it, to get a permit, and then to construct the project. And that tends to be a few hundred sheets of drawings, a project manual that looks like an old phone book, and then we use that as the design, the contract documents for the legal contract, and then also what we use as we go through the construction to make sure it's being built to the specs and the drawings. Bidding phase will be a little different with construction management, where it's much more of an open bidding. You would not only just see what would be typically like a GC bid, but you actually would see all the trade bids, because we'll be looking at a demolition contractor and 3 to 5 bids, and then determining, okay, who is going to be that contractor, and then they get assigned to a construction manager. Not sure how I just turned on that thing at the bottom, but hopefully that will go away. So then going into the project in 2015, so door hardware replacement's completed. We started this in July, this project, and we've basically been using the summer months to do some surveying of the existing buildings, because we have drawings for some portions of them, but they're not accurate enough to actually do some detailed design or wondering how I get this thing off the screen here.
We're going to get some help, maybe.
Good,
Oh.
thanks, Natalie.
Okay, Raymer, we got it. Thank
So
you.
then, we've just started our meetings with, we've established design teams. We established as kind of a steering committee, and then each of the 4 buildings has a design team with the principals involved. And as those projects go forward, there may be other characters or stakeholders at each building involved, especially the high school, because the high school is impacting such a large academic area that this is really kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them to really rethink what should it be. I mean, they've basically been working with a 1973 design, opened in 76, but are those classrooms the right size? Who should be where? I mean, how should it lay out? So it's really an opportunity. We'll start with Jack as the principal, but I think we'll have a lot of involvement there, so that we really use this as an opportunity to come up with the final enclosed classroom design that really meets the needs of today and the near future educational program. We'll be going into, basically through this fall, doing schematic design. In the winter months, moving into design development. Then in the early part of next year, doing the construction documents. And some of these, this is a very interesting project. Some areas are more challenging than others. There may be, it's conceivable that there could be different bid packages and actually different projects bid. For example, Miller is a much smaller, more concise project, and drawing up and bidding out and going forward with that is going to be easier to determine than, say, the solution for a secure entrance at Manning. Manning, if it gets drawn out, may be a 2-summer project, and it might make sense to issue, just go forward and get Miller going. Even the junior high, how it relates to the high school, right? Like this summer you had summer school activities happening in the high school. Well, that couldn't occur with what we're going to be undertaking. So where's summer school going? Would it make sense to have summer school at the junior high in 2016 and then do the summer school work, the junior high work in 2017? Those are a lot of the kind of questions and things that we really need to determine, because there's just a lot of moving parts. But you know, it might even make sense just to issue some portions of the project, like say Miller, and go forward with that quickly while we're still determining the other pieces, because it's going to be more succinct, easier to determine exactly the cost, and there's less risk. I mean, it's a fairly small project. One thing I wanted to jump back, because I think I missed it. Another piece that's currently underway, and I'll talk about this a little more, is the visitor management systems or software. We talked about this before, and we basically have in hand 4 lobby guard kiosks that we've been working with your information technology folks and basically downloading, getting the software set up. But that's actually been really helpful, because from a security point of view, it raises so many questions that, you know, what should we do? If someone comes in and scans their driver's license and it comes up on the national database, what are the procedures? Who does what? What would the police department like to have happen? Who gets notified? Who's responsible for looking at the photograph of the person who just scanned the license in the database, because false matches will happen. There's a lot of people with the same names and birthdays in this country, and they will pop up. So then what do? Who does that? And it could be your police liaison in his police car, you know, even if he was at the junior high and this happened at Manning, is he able to look at it and say, definitely not the same people? Is it the, you know, paraprofessional that's at the kiosk, or there is the principal? So we've had interesting discussions already. We've had our design teams for Miller and Manning meet, and especially on the elementary level, that's such a kind of a crucial element to have that database scanning. What do you do? So I think it'll be really interesting. It's going to take a little while to get there, but the hardware, we're getting things together to where we could roll that out. And the question would be, I think I've talked about this with Kevin, is we want to make sure when we do this that we do it well, that it works smoothly, that we know what's going to happen if there's a false positive. There's a whole aspect to it of creating this red flag list, where it could be someone who's not on that kind of database, but there might be a custody issue, and you want some notification if a parent comes that doesn't have custody of a child, comes to a school, what happens then? So a lot of questions that are beyond architects' realm, but we'll work through the process, and it's nice having these here, because it kind of gets the whole thought about securing these buildings. Having your teammates from security, the police department involved in this, I think will be really helpful, not just on the lobby guard system, but thinking about the entries to the building, and do they concur with the design solutions that we're proposing? Does it make sense to them? So in 2016, that would really be the first phase of construction. And then the end of 2016 is kind of the interesting part. Is there going to be a phase during school year? Previously, when we were talking about the referenda, that was always going to be the case because you were talking about building additions and everything. But especially this summer, after we really were talking in detail about how would you actually pull this off at the high school. I mean, it's an amazing amount of material to even just demolish in 50 days, and then what are you putting back in its place? How are you completing that? Is there a way to move forward during the school year and keep, and maybe shorten the entire construction duration, maybe save some money and get it done within those 2 summers? The actual kind of arch, the south arch of the classrooms at the high school could create opportunities where you could complete during the summer months a certain portion of that, turn it over, and then have other areas that are still under construction but are completely separate. And we've done, just because of situations like this, we've had projects that had to take place during the school year, and you come up with a solution to where noise-generating activities are done at like a second shift. Then during the day, demolition activities are hauling things out where it's quiet. So it's figuring out a way, but that, back to the construction management involvement, that will be crucial because that's what they do on a daily basis, and that expertise will be really important to the district. And then 2017 would really be getting near the end, and it would be exciting to have a solution for Manning, Miller, and closing those classrooms that were still remained open after the 1980s at the junior high. And then the high school is really going to be fascinating because there's a lot of possible solutions to the problem at the high school, and each of them have, are going to have different aspects, are going to appear differently, could possibly impact the construction schedule. So we're kind of excited to see where we end up. Kevin, I think, asked me at some point, do you like projects like this that are very challenging? And I told him that I had this great professor in college that at the beginning of a semester in a studio would write, without constraints, there is no freedom. And, his college students were like, what? But she was really right. I mean, it creates creativity, becomes a catalyst for great solutions, and we definitely have some challenges and some constraints in this project. So just quickly going over these proposed or potential solutions for each of them. Miller, if you recall, is really a more simple. It has an entry space that's large enough to, in a way, create a secure entry, but would still require a staff member to be there so you could have better control of that, be able to see the outside doors, buzz someone in, allow them to log into the lobby guard system, and then move through the space. We had a really good kickoff meeting with Tim at Miller, and some other kind of ideas arose. Is there a way to approach the doors differently so that they're these doors at the top and bottom of the stairs, that they're open most of the time and that they could be secured? So we're going to investigate a number of different solutions there, but we've met and got the ball rolling there. Manning's really interesting challenge. Where should the entrance be? It's an odd building in that it has the principal's office and what I would call the main entrance off of an alley. That's not really a design criteria that most schools are designed around. How do you do it on Linden? So I think there's going to be a lot of different design solutions, especially in that schematic design phase I referred to, and looking at, okay, what are the advantages of that approach? What are the disadvantages? How does it impact the budget? What about schedule? How is it workable? What are the problems? And so that's really going to be an interesting design challenge. Both at Miller and Manning, like I said, that once the lobby guard's up, there'll be, in a way, an interim solution with a staff member and the lobby guard in the entry vestibule. It won't be ideal, but there'll be a little difference there. And then it's going to be easier for us to roll out at the junior high a lobby guard system because they have a principal's office that can secure the entry. And then we would be using the entry area at the high school. But again, it's not really a secured entry, but there'd be someone there to man that and log people in. We talked, there's going to be basically glazing replacements, door hardware's done. Video systems at the 2 elementary schools is something that we plan to institute that would help to give some kind of active video of the perimeter area. Interior areas could help even after school hours if there's vandalism occurring or problems on the school site, that it could help in that area. The junior high is really just getting after those classrooms that were passed over for mechanical reasons back in the late 80s, and then replacement of glazing to create a more secure blunt force resistant perimeter, and then the door hardware that was a large project. The junior high and high school are the two largest projects for the door harbor replacement. And then the high school is going to be the biggest change for everybody, is going from the open plan to a more traditional enclosed classroom approach, and what will that be? This is just a quick overview of the current budget, which was basically $270,000 for Miller, $1,120,000 at JT Manning, $1,325,000 at the junior high, and $6,395,000 at the high school, for a total budget of $9,110,000. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, that was a lot of information.
I know it was, but it was an overview. I mean, I think you'll be seeing an awful lot of me in the next 2.5 to 3 years, and I'd be happy to come anytime, because the more you know, the more helpful you can be in guiding the 4 design teams, and also answering questions that you're going to be asked constantly by neighbors. I think we were talking with Manning and Miller. I think the lobby guard, when that is actually instituted, that's going to be an interesting opportunity to communicate to these parents and visitors that, okay, something's happening, and now what is it? And there's actually security versus signing your name in and taking a sticker and putting it on your chest, that it's going to be checking. And you will, by instituting that, I mean, I think it will really help as in a way like foreshadowing this other project, because it's going to be the first visible sign they'll see. And I think it will really be helpful. I think when we were just talking about today with Kristen about the police department and their involvement and training, this is a great opportunity to have them involved, because I remember back when I first started in 2007, they were involved with that strategic planning process, and when school security and safety was on the mass strategic plan, I know that was a big thing, and they've been involved almost on a yearly basis with Mike, and through Mike with me, where, how can we lock down these doors? Can we drill holes in them? They were like, adding a deadbolt. Well, we can't do that. It violates this code. So it's going to be an important involvement, and I think they'll be really pleased that the steps that you're taking to improve these 4 buildings.
I guess just to have this comment or question, I guess, I'm not sure. Obviously, there's a lot of planning that has to go on yet. A lot of thought has to go into how we're going to arrange everything. But, the end goal has always been safety and security of the students. And when it comes to the high school, I guess for me as a board member, after talking to, police officers and other things, it's not always about being able to lock the students down, but also get them out if you have to.
Right.
I know that in our high school, we have those exterior doors that are around the exterior walls. So during the design phase, if there was any thought given to putting doorways inside the classrooms to allow the students to be able to go from classroom to classroom to get to those exit doors, that's just me as a board member. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, because it's, like I say, it's not always about making sure that you can lock them down. It's also about being able to get them out of the building if you needed to.
Right.
Okay. And I guess my same thought would be about the alley entrance at Manning. I'm not really sure that's going to give us the best view of what's going on if we're doing everything from the back side of the building.
Right.
Okay. I know there's other reasons why we want the entrance in the front, but safety and security, for me, that would be a big thing. But it's just an initial thought after seeing this presentation tonight. I know that there's a whole lot yet to go on yet. So.
Right. But those are 2 big challenges. The high school, interestingly, if you can picture all those walls gone, or most of them gone the way it originally was, those doors around the perimeter that are kind of in resource areas, they were required by the code, because the codes back then really didn't know how to deal with an open plan design. So it was really kind of interesting looking back at the original construction drawings and like how they viewed that, but that direct exiting improved the safety of the building, because they felt you're not going down corridors, there's more ways out, and that allowed them to have a little less, they had to deal with the fact they weren't building corridor walls that had a fire rating. So it will be interesting, and what happens in those spaces. Right now, they've really been, they originally were some kind of resource rooms, and they've had different uses over the years. They're probably, I would say, honestly, I think they're underutilized or not utilized enough. Those could be directly out of spaces. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the solution is.
Right.
Manning, I totally agree. First time I went to Manning and I came in off the backside, I mean, I was kind of surprised, because it's not ideal. So what can we do? What solution can we have? is there a way we can eliminate that? That's just staff entrance and really bringing visitors in on Linden. Even when we've had bid openings, people, get panicked because they go to 200 Linden and they're on the wrong side of the building and they're all locked. So, I mean, there's going to be some good challenges there, but I think we're going to find a solution. I'm confident we'll find a solution.
I'm sure we will.
So bringing that up, there is still obviously the option to have staff and people come in off the back, but then
Right.
the main entrance.
I think you'd be really challenged in the project scope that you've budgeted to have, because you're never going to have the parking you would need on the non-alley side. So, and that's where that's an okay staff parking, but to bring visitors in there, the staff, they have fobs. It's the visitors coming in off an alley, which is really an ideal. I agree, it's hard to supervise. You have cars parked there. The ideal solution is kind of what you have at the front door or the Linden side, where you could literally see a broad area. Ideally, that's where a principal's office would be. So you could see that staff that are there throughout the entire school day could see things going on, and if they saw something that was unusual, that they could react to that. So sight lines, visibility and sight lines, that's really what this is all about, is giving people better visibility. That's what happened back years ago. I think it was 2007 when we did the junior high. That project was just going to be a better airphone or some kind of video solution, because they kept having a hard time seeing anybody underneath that canopy. And the more we got into, the principal's office had been chopped up and modified so many times over 40 years that it was really kind of a mess. This created an opportunity. What if we solved that problem instead of with video cameras? What if we solved it with some architecture and actually force people to come through the office? And then, in a way, we killed two birds with one stone, and that created a much better situation there. And that will be, that was really what we were that will be the guide for the high school, is creating a situation that's similar to that, where before school and after school, when things are wide open, you can come right in. But once you lock those doors, that you are forced to go through the principal's office. That is really the kind of the design standard for schools nowadays, because then you have adults managing the situation.
Well, it'll be interesting because obviously, since the referendum didn't pass, now we're using much more creative ways to do this. And so we all know that some probably won't be anything addressed for at least 20, 25 years again. So it would be really great if we can somehow figure out that if the Linden side works. And I started thinking about the whole parking situation, and obviously there's a couple of thoughts, but the other day I had to go to the high school, and in the front of the high school there's X number of visitor spots.
Right.
But then if you can't park there, you have to park in the lot, and then you have to walk over. So, I don't know, just my opinion, it might not be the worst thing in the world if people kind of had to walk around the block.
Right.
At least there is the parking lot right behind the school. So it'll be interesting to see what plays out, what
Right.
works the best to have the most secure entrance
Right.
for many, many different reasons.
Right.
To have the front office, what you say, the front office staff can see who's.
For the number of visitor spaces, that's a crucial piece of data to get to, and we're going to get to that. But how many people are coming? How's it changed throughout the school year? If we're designed for the medium, what is that? How many spaces do we really need to satisfy most of the days? Because if there's certain times of year, you're just never going to cut it. People are going to park on the street. They're going to park. I guess they park sometimes at the bank lot. They're going to find places to park. Yeah. So, finding that out at the high school, same way I know that I look quickly to see if there's any spots where I turn right and park around. So. Yeah,
I do, and I also like the fact that we have the scope and we have the summers, and there's X number of days. I know with the Manning work that was done a couple summers ago, it was like that last day of school is like, you get in there because you have this amount of time to do a lot of things. So two things, I like the thought about the possibility of that second year sectioning off a piece of the high school so that could continue. Who knows if that's going to be available, but if there's some way to do that, for a lot of reasons, if it does save money, if it saves time, if it saves any of that, that will be interesting. But I also like this at the same time where we've got two other schools that have, like the junior high and Miller, if it's not like you have to wait to get everything started. So if there's little things we can do as we go along, I think that will be very exciting to see. So
I agree.
I'm excited about that.
Back to one comment you said about Manning, I think at Manning and at Miller, I mean, Miller's going to be pretty easy, but at Manning, whatever we come up with a solution, we want to also try to anticipate, say 5 years from now, you wanted to put an elevator in at Manning. Well, where is that going to go? And to make sure that we don't somehow paint ourselves into a corner where we've eliminated an option or a location that makes sense. So it's just something we're going to need to think a little bit beyond just this current project so that it works on the long term. Because even though it's not, we knew when we were talking about the referendum project, the elevator was included into that, but now we know it's not. But where is it going to be? That building has an awful lot of levels, even inside the building, outside the building, so we need to make sure that we have some solution to that.
The junior high, we've gone through a couple different versions of this over the years talking about it, but the big expense at the junior high when we were first discussing it was the actual balancing of the classroom sizes.
Correct.
Because we're going to be able to actually enclose the open spaces there, and there won't be the issues with the heating and the cooling and all that, but it was actually moving walls and stuff that was going to cause the biggest problem there.
Correct. Trying to balance the sizes of the spaces pretty much required almost like 100% interior renovation. So all of a sudden we were impacting almost that whole footprint around the perimeter where the classrooms are. In this approach, they will still be, you'll have a classroom that's going to be, say, 2/3, 1/2. I mean, they're odd kind of relationships, but they will not be the same size, but that allows it to be a much simpler project.
Thank you.
Sure.
So by the end, all the schools will have enclosed classrooms.
Yes. It's an amazing concept.
An amazing concept, an amazing concept.
I did some research on the history of the architect who did the high school because I was curious. Okay, did an awful lot of high schools from coast to coast, and that's an interesting design. I mean, it's the look of it. That was fairly conservative compared to some I saw. I mean, there were some that they would have on almost like high school reunion sites that it was so disoriented because the whole building was just nothing but curves that students would kind of get lost and couldn't figure out where they were. And it was interesting. He did an awful lot of buildings. They had 2 offices, one in Michigan City and one in, I believe, Kansas City. And they did work from coast to coast. There's an awful lot of buildings like that.
I must say that I think the word has gotten out because having a junior high student, I know a lot of the junior high and high school kids are like, so will the walls be up? Like
Right.
they were wondering if
Right.
it's going to be up by the first day. So I know they're kind of getting excited about it and stuff. So
So with other schools having been built similarly, some more or less extreme than ours, I guess, but is there potentially information available in terms of what other schools may have done to address?
That's what I was looking for.
Okay, and
Yeah.
were you able to find much?
Not yet. Not yet. I mean, the tricky part is the slope, and then, we've already talked about what do you do with those windows that are up in the science area. I'd always heard they were added after the fact, but when we were looking back at the drawings, they were in the original drawings, but I think they were an alternate bid that obviously didn't get accepted. Mechanical, the base design for the high school was going to be more like the junior high where it was ductwork underneath the slab, and then an alternate bid was accepted where it's fiber duct that's up in the roof structure. So we were looking, Illinois Mass Science Academy was in Aurora High School initially, and they've made efforts to kind of enclose. How do they deal with the ceilings? The ceilings are a nightmare. I mean, that concealed spline has been probably since day one was a challenge because buildings, you have to get in them and do repairs and everything, and it's just as hard to take apart and put back together. How we solve the ceilings is going to be one of the biggest challenges. Also, adding the windows really changed the school. I mean, that school was very dark without those windows. Now, is there a way we can get some natural light into the interior classrooms? I think that would be really crucial to try to improve because natural light is directly tied to student performance. They know it helps both in academic spaces, business offices. Natural light's crucial. So, but that was why I started the search. I was just curious. But I really do want to see examples. Some have been knocked down. I mean, they just got to the point it was just too much. Hinsdale Middle School is in the news now because they're looking at facilities there. That was an open school design, 1976, and that's been partially enclosed. It was not as voluminous as yours, and they'd made enclosures there, but those created their own challenges. And so they're looking at renovating or knocking that down, so.
Okay. So we've asked Mr. Cashman to come back a couple times a year to give us updates and keep the community involved and I mean, updated on what where we're going with all of this. But as an overview, it's exciting.
And we have a nice starting point.
Great starting point. And by the end, again, we're back to our safety, security, and learning environment.
Right.
All right.
Well, I just have one more thing, and it's more directed at Kevin. Seems it's going to be quite a challenge for summer school, so I think we should be ready for that, because I know our summer school program has been growing, and we want it to improve, and
Yeah.
it's difficult if we're doing construction in the building that we hold summer school in, so good luck.
Right, and
Yeah.
we're already having conversations, we recognize the fact that for the high school to house the entire summer school program, or possibly any portion of it, will be difficult, but that's why we're looking at the possibility of the junior high having it for 1 year, and then possibly back to the high school if possible. So the goal is to maintain our summer school program while we're improving our facilities.
Okay.
Juggling. Great. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Great,
Well,
thank
in
you.
the end, it'll be
Thanks, Steve.
be great, so. Well, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, then the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Okay, a couple items contained in my report. First of all, we are past the 6th day of school, and so the buildings always submit their 6th-day enrollment. And there are 3 attachments. One is kind of gives you the attendance by grade level within the district. Then the second one is a breakdown for Manning and Miller, because that's always been a question as to the enrollment in each class based upon the number of sections. And then the last document is the staffing guidelines that we have for the district that we agreed upon. But overall, Manning is down slightly from 377 last year to 365 this year. Miller is up from 161 to 191. The junior high has seen a slight decrease from 332 to 294, and the high school is up a little bit, 426 to 450. And of course, the junior high and the high school are impacted by what enters from the elementary schools. So in all, and then when you look at our per grade level for each of the elementary buildings, we're in good shape. We still have seats available, but that's something we will monitor. If any time we approach some of those cutoff numbers, we would bring that to the board and look for input on how to resolve those. But right now, we're in pretty good shape. Something interesting, though, is for Manning and Miller with the all-day kindergarten. Manning, we have 3 students who opted for half-day. We do have to have a half-day option. I do know that the buildings were working very hard with the families trying to get them, have their children enroll for a full day. That may happen at the semester. That's not uncommon. And then at Miller, we have 1 student who has opted for half-day. And so basically those students attend in the morning, and then they go home in the afternoon. And then for our dual language program at Miller, we actually had 20 students opt for dual language. So that's, again, a program I think that is growing, and as we continue with that, I think it's only going to get bigger for us.
Is that the largest class for the dual
Yes.
language?
Yep.
I'd also like to say, this is a wonderful balance of class sizes. I mean, finally, throughout the district, we're actually seeing a little bit more of a level between the 2 buildings, okay, instead of an extreme. I think that's very good.
Sure.
Well, and before you leave that, I had asked Kevin to just remind us again what we had kind of agreed on with the recommended class sizes. And it is nice to continue to see that we have, really good, small class sizes, and we don't have big, huge numbers. So it's great to see that we can still offer that to staff and to students. So this is fantastic.
And then just a couple other items. One is, we mentioned this at our last meeting, but again, just to reiterate, we have 4 committees that are not only staff and administrators from the district, but also community-based, and that's strategic planning, climate, facilities, and finance. And those 4 committees do meet on the same evening. We call it our joint committee, and those dates again are November 3rd, January 5th and May 3rd, and those meetings take place at the high school in the Commons, starting at 6:30. We typically try to complete the meeting an hour and a half to 2 hours. But again, reaching out to community members, I actually did have a community member did approach me and asked to be a part of our facility and finance committee, and so he'll be joining us, so that was great to see. But again, that's an opportunity for the community to be involved in their school district. And then one last item, on Tuesday, October 6th, is the DuPage Division of the Illinois Association of School Boards Fall Dinner Meeting. It'll be at the Hilton in Lisle at 5:45. And I do have a sheet that I'll circulate later if you're interested in attending. Rima will make that reservation for the district. And then another that I mentioned in the board update, on that Monday, October 5th, we did this last year where the board met with the officers of the Westmont Teacher Association, and it was the understanding no business was to be discussed. It was more of a social opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. And then this year, we'd like to see that expanded with the leadership from WESPA, and then also our Custodian Maintenance Association. That date, again, right now, we're looking at October 5th. And again, sometime this evening, if you could let me know if that date will work for you. Is it October 19th, Rainey? The other possibility is October 19th if we can't get October 5th to work for everybody. But two dates coming up that if you could check your calendars.
Okay. I have a quick question, and I know a couple people have asked this already since our football teams are doing so fantastic already and winning. I know homecoming's October 2nd, and just to reiterate, there has been no decision yet on the parade. I've been asked by a couple people, and I know I asked Mr. Frias, but people should just stay tuned.
Right.
Information will be
We have
coming out.
a new sponsor.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we'll get that information out to the
Information will be
community.
coming out, so. But again, I was going to wait till my board report, but so far, doing very well in that, so. Okay, then are there any board reports?
I would just like to comment that on Saturday, the high school marching band and some of the junior high marching band members got to participate at Northwestern University. I know this is a program that they started a few years ago where they go to at least one different college every year. I think it was a wonderful experience for the students. I think I hope it continues for many years. I know that it just looked like a great exposure for students. There was 2,000 members on the field. There was 18 different high schools involved, and they were all playing the same song, and I think that's quite an accomplishment considering they were never together until that moment. So, but the kids had a great time, and I think that's just great. I hope that continues.
National exposure.
Yes.
Well, and it looked like we had, I think, 3 busloads head out there, which is just great to see that kind of participation. So that many kids got to go.
I will also add, if anybody has taped the game, if you watch when Northwestern scores their touchdown in the second quarter and they kick the extra point, that is our band members sitting there on the field just beyond the end zone. You can see them. So anyways, that was a great exposure for the students.
Yeah, it was great. And some of the junior high kids even went.
Yes, and then
So-
some of the junior high kids too, yes.
And once again, anytime you can get kids on a college campus, and
Awesome,
and that's probably why Northwestern beat Stanford that day, so.
I'm sure it is.
without a doubt.
Okay, anything else?
Marie, just a kind of a quick thing from SASSA that may be coming toward or to the individual member boards. At some point, we kind of had a discussion, about it and decided it would be explored further, but there's the idea of SASSA becoming its own legal entity. Right now, you have 18 member districts who come together and function very, very much like a regular school board, only just much larger. And they vote on things, but certain of those items have to actually go through one of the member district's board, and then they give the actual technical approval. Things like the budget, I think certain tenure issues and riffing and that sort of thing have to go back to an individual one of the member districts' board. They function as I can't remember what it's called, fiscal, like the fiscal officer for SASSA. And so what they're looking at doing is kind of, because they have to it's kind of a burden in one respect for that one member district to have to do that function. And also it technically turns the official business that the SACID board conducts over to another board to actually approve. And, with elected school boards, you never know the makeup. And sometimes board members feel a little uneasy about that because they're kind of just handed information to approve, and so they feel a little bit, like they're not well informed enough about what their role is in that. So part of the decision to at least explore that would help eliminate that unease that at least one of the member districts have as they function in that role as the fiscal officer. So they're looking at that. If it happens, I guess each member board would have to vote on a resolution or something that would help facilitate that process, and there would be some further education about it at that point. But they are at least going to explore that option. One of the districts had been served that role for 4 or 5 years, I think, and then they wanted to step out of that role, which led to having to find another board that would basically volunteer to fill that, and there was some discussion on whether it should be kind of an automatic thing, and every board should get a rotating basis to serve that function, and one way around that would also to have the SACID board be its own entity, and that would only be brought about by all the member districts voting on it. So it might be something that comes up at a later date.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other board reports? Okay, are there any public comments? Okay, then in terms of future meetings and events, the Manning School Ice Cream Social, September 9th at 5 o'clock. The Westmont High School Open House, September 9th at 7 o'clock. The Westmont Junior High School Curriculum Night is on September 17th at 6 o'clock at the junior high. And the next school board meeting, September 22nd at 7 o'clock, right here in Village Hall. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining, personnel issues, student discipline, probable litigation, security issues, and superintendent evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
And there will not be a vote after closed.